And we are live. G'day everyone, Mike Jeffrey here, and you're listening to My Creative Journey, episode number 48. To all your listeners out there, hello, and thank you so much for taking the time to stop by here today. As I said, my name is Mike, and I'm a photographer, podcaster, and small business owner based here in Port Macquarie, Australia. Each week on the show, I bring you guys along on the highs and lows of my own creative journey and share all the knowledge that I've gained along the road to building my own freelance business. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking all about work-life balance, something that has always plagued me throughout my whole creative journey. Through starting my business, it's always been something that I've really struggled with to maintain a good work-life balance, and I think it's hard for most creative people. But before we jump into that, I want to talk about what has been going on for me this past week. And as I spoke about, I think a couple episodes ago, in episode 46, I've just finished editing a large amount of photos over the past couple of weeks. I've been very heavily stuck in my computer editing those photos. But at this time of year, I think for everyone, it's very hard to maintain focus on work. I think this time of year, as we head into Christmas, as we head into the new year, very hard to really stay focused on work, especially when a lot of people are starting to go on holidays. A lot of people are starting to actually break for the end of the year and move into a little bit of a holiday period before they start up again in the new year. And it's very hard to maintain focus on work for people who may have to work through that period and may have to get work ready to go in the new year, may have to get work already scheduled to go over the new year period. I think for me, being able to create enough content to have online over the new year, so I'm not working throughout that stage, it's been hard. I think that is one of the things that I always struggle with, is trying to plan content ahead of time. That's one thing that has always been hard for me, and so this past couple of weeks has been a big process of that. But it's hard to really sit down and get a lot of work done when you know that you would rather be out trying to go do something else. If it's a beautiful day outside, you'd rather be outside enjoying the sunshine. And I think that is why this episode came about for me today, because it's so important to be able to create that work-life balance, and so important to be able to get that right at the start and get those procedures in place, I guess, to in order for you to have that work-life balance from the get-go. And it's always been something that I've really struggled with, because I think in the beginning, one of the big things for me to starting my own business and starting my own creative journey here was to really to be able to give myself that freedom. And I think a lot of creative people walk into creative fields and try to start in a creative industry to be able to give themselves that freedom, because it's the idea that you are going to be trying to do what you love every single day. You're going to be working on things that you really enjoy working on every single day. But as a result of that, I think a lot of the time, the opposite can happen, where you're just working so much more than you ever were in any other job. You're working more than the 9 to 5. You're working so many hours every single day, and you seem to have no freedom at all. You seem to be working endlessly. And even though you may be enjoying those tasks, there's no enjoyment when you're not getting any free time and you're not able to do other things that you also enjoy. You tried to start out in a creative job to give yourself freedom, and you've ended up with absolutely no freedom at all, because you're just grinding yourself to get as much work done as you possibly can, because you really want to project yourself. There is that thing when you work for yourself, you really want to work hard and you want to do as much work as you possibly can, because all the work that you do impacts you. You know, you see a direct result from that. You see your business starting to grow. You see more clients starting to come in. You see more income starting to come in. So that can sort of help you to generate more momentum in your business, more motivation to continue on, and therefore you're working harder, because as the harder you work, you end up having a direct result on your business. But we forget that we need to sometimes slow down. We need to sometimes take that break. We need to sometimes have a bit of time away in order to be a lot more productive in the long run, in the next couple of weeks, in the next months ahead. And so we don't burn ourselves out in the long run. And that for me has been one of those things where I need to be able to create that work-life balance, but it is very hard. I think one of the other big things with working in a creative field and trying to do what you love as a career, it can often seem like your work and your life sort of bleed into one, because your life is your work is your life, because you enjoy all aspects of it. And so something that you would have done in your free time before is now something you have to do for a job. It's now something you get paid to do. So that becomes hard, and those lines become blurred, because it can be hard to see, well, hang on, a year ago, this would have been something that I did on the side of my other job because I really enjoyed it. This was something that gave me so much pleasure. It gave me so much enjoyment and fulfillment in life. So why would I take time away from that to go and do something else now? Why would I then, am I just switching out a job for a creative career, and then I'm going to go and have another hobby on the side that I then can switch out? And is this just a never-ending cycle? So for me, trying to create some sort of balance in there, it can be hard. And for a lot of creative people, I think this is something that people genuinely struggle with, in trying to create that freedom, because the two can blend into one, and there isn't anything wrong with that. I think that is a very positive thing when you can do something that you genuinely love, and you can do that all day, every day. If you can make that work, I think that is so important. But it's often sometimes that some things and some tasks will come up that you can forget that you are working. You can forget that this is even work at all, and there'll be other tasks that come up where you really feel like you're drained and really feel like this is a hard slog to get through that task. One of the things that I think is really important in that is having a set schedule. For me, working as a creative person, it was great because I get to have that flexibility. I don't have to work the 9 to 5. As I said, I most often end up working way more hours than the 9 to 5, but I don't have to be stuck in the 9 to 5 because I don't find that I get most of my productive work done between the hours of 9 and 5. I don't think anyone in the world actually gets their most productive hours done between 9 and 5. I think you get your most productive hours done when you actually get your most productive hours done. I think that changes per person, and there's no recommendation that I could give any one person out there on when they should do their most productive work. But it's so important to have a schedule and to work out your own time for yourself. And we need to be able to set time limits on ourselves. We need to be able to set boundaries. I think we work well to constraint. You will only use the amount of time that you allow yourself. If you allow yourself 3 hours to do a task, you'll end up having to do that task in 3 hours, and you'll end it right on 3 hours. If you give yourself an hour, you'll end it in an hour. You have to give yourself some sort of constraint, because otherwise, if you have an open-ended task, you'll just keep working on it forever and ever. So the fact that I didn't have to work 9 to 5, yeah, that's great, but I still have to put constraints on myself to be able to work within some sort of hours and some sort of confines, because otherwise I will end up working forever, and I'll work into all of my free time if I don't set those schedules around things that I need to do. And over the past couple of weeks, it's been a good reminder of that, because I've been sitting here editing a lot of photos on my computer, and that hasn't been something that I've always done. It's very much something that fluctuates depending on when I have work and where I have work, and depending on how much work I have at any one particular time. So over the past couple of weeks, I had a little bit of work, so I've been sitting down editing quite a few photos on my computer. So therefore, other things that I would normally do on a routine basis, like edit this podcast or record this podcast, have sort of gone by the wayside because the schedule has become off balance a little bit. And I had tasks that I actually had to do. There was a really hard set constraint on me that I had tasks to do. So then other things that I didn't think were as necessary started to get pushed to the wayside. So having a set schedule from the start is so important, because when you can say to yourself, well, I have these hours already defined out that I can work on these certain things, then it becomes much easier to slot those into your schedule and work around those and still have some sort of balance, because you know you have time to be able to get these tasks done because you've already allowed yourself that much time in your schedule anyway. How often have you, as a creative person, ever sat at home and worked and thought, it's a great day outside today, I'd really love to be outside and I'd really love to go and do something that I would really enjoy. I'd like to go out to the beach, I'd like to go out for coffee, I'd like to go take photos, any number of things, but you think, I've got so much on that I can't take that time. Now, when I first started my creative business, I thought that the reason I was starting that was to have that freedom, was to say, well, if I ever have something on that I'd really like to go and do, I can have an hour here and there, and that doesn't really matter because I don't work the 9 to 5. I don't work in anyone else's schedule. I'm not confined by anyone else. But I found myself saying over the past couple of weeks, no, I have these hard deadlines that I've got to get done. I don't have any spare time. I'm really behind on my things that I need to do. And that was as a result of not having a set schedule. If I had have planned my time ahead, if I had have given myself set boundaries, I would have known that, if I have an hour out here, that's fine because I can put an hour here. Whereas I was thinking that I just had all this work and I just had a big pile of tasks on top of me, and that I had no time to be able to go and do anything that I really wanted to do. It got to a point where there was no balance at all, because I didn't have any free time, because in the free time I was stressed about the work that I needed to do. So then I was thinking too much about the work, and my work was starting to bleed into free time, and that is when it can become really hard. And it's a weird phenomenon, because you think, well, I started this to be able to have some freedom, but now I don't have any sort of freedom at all, even though I have all this freedom, because in the end of the day, I still am able to do the things that I love as a career, but I also don't have any freedom at all. So where do you sort of sit on that spectrum? And it's always been very, very confusing for me. And I know if it's confusing for me, it's probably confusing for other people. And in terms of other people, I think the outsider's perspective on this is also important. I think there are a lot of people who look at creatives and think that they don't have any sort of balance in their life. They think that that is a great thing. They think that that is amazing, that there is nothing that defines them. They're allowed to work whenever they want. They can work in their free time. They can work in office hours. They can work on the weekends. They don't really care, just as long as they get the work done. And they think that that's an amazing thing. They think that they have so much flexibility. But then also on the other hand, I think a lot of outside people don't understand that is a very hard thing to have to go by. It's easy to turn up to a 9 to 5 and be there at 9 o'clock and end at 5 o'clock, and you get to walk away. You don't have to take that stress home with you. You don't normally, in most jobs, have to walk away and think there's so much to do. I need to head back to work to go and do that work. And so a lot of people can tend to think that if you're a creative person, that you're just super flexible and that you can just drop your schedule and change it whenever you want, which is a little bit true, but also in other senses, you need to have a set schedule. Just because your schedule may not be the same as everyone else's, you still need to have one. And I think that is important and something that a lot of people don't understand, and especially a lot of creative people don't understand, that the idea of a schedule, the idea of a routine, the idea of being able to set yourself tasks on set days and set hours of the week is so important, because it gives you that structure and allows you to know when you can move things. You need to have rules in place to be able to break them. So you need to know when your hours are, and then if you would like to take an hour off, you can just move it somewhere else. If you're just working all day aimlessly and you've got no idea how many hours you're spending on every set task, it's going to be very hard to maintain a balance when you want to say to yourself, well, I'd like to go do something else this afternoon, but you think in the back of your mind, oh, I've actually got this other task to do and they've somehow got something else, when you could probably move that on to tomorrow. But if you're just thinking that you've got never-ending tasks and you haven't planned out how much time you have for each of them, it can be very stressful. It's also then, in that token, easy for other people to rob you of your work hours. It's easy to rob you of time when you should be working, because people see creative people as being very flexible. And if they're off on a day, or if they have a weekend, or if they have an afternoon off and they are asked to meet up and they are asked to go hang out, it can be hard for them to understand that, well, you're actually working now. But because you as a creative person, your whole career is that it is flexible. So they think, oh, that's fine, because they can just catch up on it later. And you have to take a hard line on yourself. You have to make sure that you're emphasizing the fact that you have these work hours. I think it's so important to hold yourself accountable to that, because other people will always try to steal that from you. Other people will try to take that time from you when you need to work, because there are tasks that we need to get done. There are things that we need to do. And if anyone else is trying to rob you of that time when you're trying to do that task, I think that is super important for you to have a hard line and say, hang on, I've actually got to get this done before I can go and do that. I've got to go and achieve this thing before I can go and do that other thing that I enjoy as well. And we need to be very hard on ourselves, because it can easily be pushed back. And once you get that ball rolling, it's hard for anyone else to understand that there are tasks that you need to do. On the reverse of that, it's not only friends and family members taking time away from you, but it's you taking time away from them. So if you're always working, if you're working into the afternoons, into the evenings, on the weekends as well, you can be taking time away that you probably should be spending with them, that time you could be interacting with other people, and they can find that hard to understand. I think one of the hardest things for me is that my partner Emily works a 9 to 5, and so that she works within those hours, and then after that is expecting to come home and hang out and come home and do other things, which is totally okay, because that is what we do and we enjoy hanging out. But then for me, it's stressful when I have things due, but I think, hang on, I didn't choose to work the 9 to 5, so I'm going to do some work after work, and I'm going to work into the evenings when that is already allocated as our time. So then that becomes to bleed. And so you can be taking time away from them in something that they would like to do. So we need to be very constrained on ourselves in being able to put things in place. I think there is nothing worse than just working an open-ended schedule where no one knows what hours you work, and no one knows when you work, and no one knows what tasks you have due. I think important on yourself to be able to work the hours you want to work. If you want to work early mornings, if you want to work in the nights, that's fine. But make sure you're consistent with that. Make sure you're hard and fast on those rules for yourself, and don't work outside of that. And don't, when you have big tasks, just work an 80-hour week every other week, and then the next week have it off. I think you have to spread yourself. You have to give yourself consistency. First off, we don't really want to be able to burn ourselves out in a couple of weeks' time because we've just worked 3 80-hour weeks back to back and haven't had any breaks for 3 weeks. But also, we want to be able to prove to other people and show other people and enjoy our time with other people. We don't want to be getting to a situation where we're just constantly working. And most of the time that we are actually working, we're not being as productive as we possibly could be, because we're not defining ourselves and defining hours that we need to be working on set things. So it's that two-way street of, you need to be making sure that you're hard and fast on the rules when you work, when other people are trying to take that time from you, but also don't take time from other people. Don't take all your weekends away and be working in your office all weekend when you could be spending that time with other people. I think it's super important to make sure that you have those routines in place and those set schedules throughout the week so that you're not allowing time to bleed into other things. The last thing I want to touch on before we close out this episode is the use of social media. Social media can be one of those things where it's a bit of a gray area where you don't know whether it's for work or for pleasure or for your life. Some of those lines can get blurred. And for me, social media has always been one of those things that I will do outside of work hours. Now, I've started in the past couple of weeks to really set up a schedule of scheduling my Instagram posts, scheduling my Facebook posts, all those types of things for my business, and making sure that I'm not on my phone scheduling those and actually posting that content at 6 or 7 o'clock at night. That's always been one of the hardest things for me because I like to be able to put content out there every night. I think that is one of the better hours to put content out there because a lot of people are on the platform, but I don't want to be spending an hour every night at 6 o'clock having to post a photo. And that's always been one of the hardest things. Hardest things for me is trying to upload content outside of work hours. So being able to schedule those has been very helpful, but we also don't want to get to a point where we aren't able to use social media outside work hours. I think social media is a great thing, and it's been able to connect us with so many different people. And we don't want to ever say to ourselves that we can't use that because it is a work tool. I've intentionally blurred those lines between work and my personal life because I think the two bleed into each other, and I think the two really do bounce off each other. And I enjoy being on social media as well, but I don't want to be on there 100% of the time. So knowing how much you can balance yourself and how much you should be on there versus how much you can get done before time and how much you can actually schedule out beforehand, because it's that real trade-off of making sure that you're involved in your community and making sure you're answering messages from people and making sure you're responding to people and making sure you're engaging with a lot of different people on social media, but then also not being on there all the time. If there are tasks, if there are tasks that you can do ahead of time, make sure and just have a go at trying to get those done before time and make sure you're trying to actually schedule out posts. I know for me, I'm very, very bad at trying to schedule posts. I don't work well a long way in advance. I tend to always leave everything to the last minute. So it's very hard for me to schedule an Instagram post even an hour before. I'm normally working right up until the end, but it's going to be something that I have to work on and have to get that schedule in place, as I said, to ultimately get that done a long way in advance. And as we move into this stage of the year, I don't want to be on my phone all over the holidays. So making sure that I'm scheduling posts to be up and scheduling myself to be on there. But then after I post a photo, I can still be on there interacting with people. I can still be engaging with people, but I don't need to spend that hour actually typing out a caption for an Instagram post every single night. I can schedule those in ahead of time so that then the time that I do have, I'm able to be interacting with other people, or I can be spending it with other people in real life as well and not being on my phone so much, because I think that is one of those areas where on your phone can be seen as, well, I'm away from my computer, so I'm not therefore at work, but you're still engaging in work tasks. You're still engaging in uploading content that is advertising for your work, that is promotional for your work, that is trying to build your network and your brand. So that is ultimately work tasks, but it can sort of disguise itself as being a personal task when you're on your phone. So making sure you have clear boundaries on how much you're going to be on there, but how much you can also do ahead of time, because I think there is so much that you can do these days, especially in making sure that content is ready to go ahead of time if you are someone who tries to get that content up and out there a lot of the time. What is it that you're doing to create balance in your work and your life, and how are you going about trying to create that balance? Is it that you're defining a set amount of hours that you need to work per week, and that you have an idea of the hours each and every day that you are trying to work? I know for myself, I'm trying to confine myself within those hours. Obviously, as a creative person, I do work on the weekends sometimes. I do work in the evenings. I have things on, but I can then take time out of my week then to then substitute for that time on the weekend and trying to make sure that there is some sort of balance there. And if I am working one weekend, that I have a Friday off or I have a Thursday off. I don't need to make sure that I'm working every single day of the week and working continual hours all week. Is it that you're trying to be off your phone after work hours? Is it that you're trying to be away from your computer in the morning? Are you trying to get out of the house in the morning and get things done and then come back and work in the afternoon? We got to think about these things. We got to create balance in our life, and time away will really help you in the long run. It will help you be more productive. I think people often think that the harder they work now, the harder that they work in the next couple of weeks is going to really reward them in the long term. Whereas sometimes taking a break and easing into things can help you in the long term to maintain to maintain motivation, but to maintain your focus as well, and to stay productive over a long period of time. So I just wanted to really share this episode because it has been something that I've been going through over the past couple of weeks, and something that I've been really struggling with, but I'm trying to put things in place to make sure that I'm aware of it. And I think being aware of it's the first step, but then put things in place to actually schedule out time and make sure that we're prioritizing not only our work, but prioritizing our life as well, because at the end of the day, that's very important. And if we're not having a life, we're going to be finding it very hard to be able to stay focused at work. So with that said, guys, I hope you really enjoyed this episode. If you did, I would appreciate it if you could share it around with a friend, share it around with someone who you think may also enjoy this, share it around with someone who's in the creative industry who you may think does not have a great work-life balance. I think it's always important to start a conversation, and anything I can do and anything you can do to be able to help them, I think would really be appreciated. But until next week, guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will speak to you all again next Monday, hopefully. And if I don't speak to you before, have a Merry Christmas and a very, very Happy New Year. Bye.